It's the Beatles from the beginning to the end. It's their solo careers. It's their humor. It's their incredible music. It's the British invasion. It's their American adversaries. It's an historical musical education. It's the Beatles and a whole lot more. A Beatles fan's paradise. It's Beatles-A-Rama. Tune in. You'll love it.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We always talk Beatles here, and there's so much in the news these days between the Lennon box set, the Beatles Anthology information, all the Wing stuff coming out, and you may have noticed I've been kind of absent with my podcast because I've been sick for the past couple of weeks, but now I'm finally coming back, and we're doing a show this time on the Beatles Anthology, and there's also going to be a show with things we said today and Talk More Talk, a combo, which we're going to do the end of this week. So let's welcome the guests here on this show. If you don't know them by now, as Ringo would say, you're in the wrong place. First of all, we have Steve Marinucci, who started Things We Said Today with me. He's known for years and years of giving us Beatle news like no one else has. With the Abbey Road website, he has his own Facebook page of Beatles news briefs. Oh, that's his podcast. And he writes for Billboard.com, Variety, Medium, Goldmine, and others. He's a busy guy, and it's always great to have him back on the channel. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Ken. Thank you.
It's the Beatles News and Information Facebook page.
That's
The
right.
podcast is Beatles News
Beatles News
Briefs.
Right.
Okay. We also have Al Sussman with us. Al has been with me since the 80s, going back to my years on WDHA in New Jersey as a frequent guest, sometimes with Tom Frangione. And you know him for all his years as a contributing writer and editor for Beatle Fan, and also for being one of the co-hosts of Things We Said Today for several years. And hello, Al. Good to have you back.
Hi, Ken. Good to be back.
And Bruce Spizer is with us. If you ever had a Beatles library with books in it, Bruce would take up a whole wall with all the books that he's written. And let's hope that he's still going to continue. He's done a whole series on every Beatles album, British and American, plus books on the Beatles on Capitol, on VJ, on Swan, you name it, on Apple. And let's welcome Bruce back.
Glad to be back, and to quote the Shylights, if you don't know me by now.
You'll never, never, ever know him.
So there you go.
All right, so we're going to talk about the Beatles anthology here, and the most important thing to me is talking about Volume 4 and also Episode 9, but I also wanted to find out from the three of you, when the news broke about this, about Volume 4 coming out, what was your immediate reaction? Because many of us were expecting a Rubber Soul box set this year. So were you pleased with the news that it was an anthology release, or were you more disappointed about it not being Rubber Soul? So let's start with Steve.
I was pleased because I figured the Rubber Soul box would come eventually. But in looking at where each of the tracks came from, I was disappointed because there really, anybody that had a extensive Beatle collection that followed the releases had most of the tracks already. And that disappointed me. I was hoping that they would pull more out of the vaults. And I mean, practically, a number of tracks came from the bootleg recordings Apple release, which I would suspect most people have. Granted, it wasn't on CD, but so all those tracks that they used, I think there were 13. Were
Yeah,
in
13 new ones.
were in the release. But so those are here on CD for the first time. but others came from Sergeant Pepper, others came from the Sergeant Pepper Deluxe, the White Album Deluxe, the Let It Be Deluxe, the Abbey Road Deluxe. Um, uh, I think three of them, according to my count, there was actually a chart. Somebody put out a chart, and it wasn't accurate completely, but I think three tracks were actually new. I think. Correct me, guys, if I'm wrong on that.
Wow.
But
As far as unreleased, there's 13.
well, no, unreleased being unreleased to CD. Um, am I right there, or am I wrong? Because
No, as far as officially released, now some of these may have been on bootlegs, but they weren't on bootlegs I had.
okay,
So for me, what I really said, and I've written the piece that I'll have out on my website, beatle.net, within the next couple of days. I want to, really get into everything. And what I say is the good news with Anthology 4 is it contains 13 new tracks. The bad news is it contains 13 new tracks, as in only 13 new tracks.
Hmm.
So I pick up on, what you're saying there. But I think, the old question is, who is this aimed at? And I think that becomes a case of uh, if you're going to do something aimed strictly at someone who has bought the the official bootleg disc, and all of the deluxe box sets, then okay, there are 13 songs that are new. But for many people who didn't know about the official bootleg recordings and people who did not want to spend the money for the deluxe box sets,
Hmm.
many of these tracks will be new to them. So for those individuals, Anthology 4 is going to be almost entirely new. So I get that. I think that at this stage, Apple is really looking to maintain the Beatles' legacy way beyond my lifetime. And to do that, they need to attract younger people. I mean, your initial question was, what was your initial reaction? My initial reaction was kind of like, really? Anthology?
Hmm.
That just came out. Well, yeah, it just came out 30 years ago.
Hmm.
So, I think once you look at it that way, many of the people who are going to be listening to and streaming, we'll talk about that later, I'm sure,
Mhm.
on Disney Plus and Anthology, these are people that weren't listening to music or weren't even born when Anthology came out. I mean,
Mhm.
Tom Frangione says, well, Bruce, Natalie, who does all that wonderful work with me, she wasn't
Mhm.
born when Anthology came out.
Hmm.
So, for someone like that, of that age group, this is all a bunch of new stuff. For
Right.
us, it's a mixed bag, and we can talk about that, and we really should. But, my initial reaction was, yeah, I was kind of disappointed about only 13, but I understood why. And to me, although from a selfish standpoint, I wish every project were aimed solely at, for me, uh, you know,
Sure.
as a Beatles fan who wants the Beatles
Mhm.
legacy to continue on just as the legacies of Beethoven, Bach, Schubert, Louis
Hmm.
Armstrong, all the great timeless music. I understand why they did what they did, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah. And those of you who follow what I've done on my podcast, I always bring this up, how important it is to gain new audiences and younger audiences. And in that regard, I've often said the Beatles One is one of the most important releases ever
Absolutely.
because it introduced the Beatles music to new generations, to people who didn't know who the Beatles were. Parents bought the CD for their kids, maybe grandparents bought it for their grandkids. And we had a whole new generation of fans when Beatles One came out. For the rest of us who've had those songs 20 times over, what's the point of putting that out? And I know that there are some fans out there, and I work with Alan Kozin, and Alan, I think, cares more about what he wants. He wants all
Yeah.
the unreleased stuff to come out. He doesn't seem to care much about. I love working with him, you know that,
Sure.
but he doesn't care about, in order to keep the Beatles catalog preserved and to connect with people in the future, you got to find ways of winning over young people.
Yeah.
That's the only way most businesses survive, period.
I
So,
remember, Beatles one really well because when I heard about it, my initial reaction is, who is this for? Yeah, I'm a completist, so I'll buy it, but who's going to
yeah.
buy this? What I failed to realize was that the only thing out there of a career overview were the red and blue collections. And on CD, that cost you $64.
Mhm.
On the other hand,
Yeah.
you could go to a store and for $14 on sale, you could get all these great number one songs. And when I realized that, it was like, no, this is brilliant. And of course it sold extremely well. And as you all have said, it exposed a lot of people to the Beatles. The only downside was the Beatles' first number one single, Please Please Me, wasn't on it due to a technicality, and also because I think they would have broken the rule for it, but for the fact that they had added Please Please Me, the rate of returns would have been higher on the CDs because they probably would
Yeah.
have had a lot of manufacturing defects.
hmm Yeah.
But
Okay.
anyway,
But
that's what you
just
get.
going to Al, I wanted to know the Rubber Soul versus Anthology, how you felt about that.
Yeah, I was, originally I was a little disappointed that for I guess the third time, uh, the Rubber Soul reissue was being pushed back, and actually I've been thinking about it, and I don't know, I'm starting to think that maybe there's not going to be a Rubber Soul box. There might be because I have a hunch that because of the fact that the sessions for Rubber Soul were not that extensive, they weren't stretched over a certain length of time in the way that everything from Revolver onward was, that
Mhm.
there may not be all that much archival material. So
I
that,
would, I would say that every time, because the Beatles would be like, well, this anthology, this is the bottom of the barrel. There's nothing worth releasing after this.
yeah,
And there
right.
always is. So, from my standpoint, we've heard a bunch of the remix songs. We have three tracks from Rubber Soul sessions that are on Anthology 4.
hmm
And I mean, I got to tell you, I really enjoyed particularly
Oh
two of the
yeah.
three. I mean,
Oh, me
Nowhere
too.
Man to me, I could, take or leave, but In My Life and I've Just Seen a Face to me were fascinating, and I know we'll talk about each of them individually, but let me jump in on those because In My Life, I mean, it's take one. Obviously, they've rehearsed it,
Hmm.
but that take one could have been the master take. I don't hear anything about it that I would say we really need to redo that song. They left the gap in the middle for
Right.
the
hmm
solo to go. And what I also enjoyed about it was the studio banter, where John says these Fenders are heavy. I thought that John and George were on Epiphone Casinos, but if they're both playing the same guitar, John's clearly on his Fender Stratocaster, and George probably is too. So, we learned something new just from John complaining about how heavy the Fender was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
My point is just that there may not, the amount of archival material might not be, because, they had to really accelerate the recording process. Of course, they had been doing that for, 2 years to almost 3 years before
yeah.
that, because of touring obligations. Revolver was really the first album in which they were able to kind of stretch out and record over a longer period of time.
I,
So
I
that's why
still
I'm,
think
But
I
you,
still think you can do, it may not be 4 discs, but I certainly
yeah.
think you could do 2 or 3 discs very
Oh yeah.
easily.
Oh yeah. Easily.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was going to say that just because they didn't have as extensive material as they did for the later albums, there's no reason why they couldn't do something. And I think a lot of people would appreciate it if the costs were down a little bit too.
Yeah, that too.
So
Absolutely.
that's not a problem as far as I'm concerned.
hmm
well, I was going to say that we're living at a time where there's so much stuff that goes out over the internet, in particular on YouTube. And even going back to when the anthology was first released, there's so many things that you could do. You could just have backing tracks be released. You could just
Mhm.
have the harmonies on a Beatles song, just the harmony part, isolated from everything else. And some people will find that fascinating. Some people might think that's really going a little bit digging too deep or something. But a lot of
Mhm.
people love to just zero in
Yeah, but
on
funny you should
isolated
say that,
tracks.
Ken, because think of how Rubber Soul was issued. The stereo version of Rubber Soul is basically vocals on one side, instruments on the other for
Hmm.
the
Yeah, oh,
songs.
yeah.
So, in that regard, I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of the tracks remixed with a proper stereo
Mhm.
balanced mix. But you've already pretty much as a kid growing up, I was fascinated by it, Ken. I'm like you. I'm into. Gee, I'd love to hear those harmonies better. On
Hmm.
Girl, I might not have noticed the naughty things they were saying in the background if I wasn't able to isolate
Yeah.
the vocals.
Right.
Yeah, but even when the anthology came out and they had Eleanor Rigby, just the strings. How
Yeah.
fantastic was that to hear by itself?
Yeah.
And Within You Without You, just the backing tracks. That was brilliant at that time. It's still brilliant now, and I would love to hear stuff like that. If you can expand on something like that more and more, you can have a few discs of material. Whether or not everyone at Apple wants that out is
That's
another
the thing.
story.
And
But
it may not even be Apple's decision. These days, Apple is just part of, Universal Music Group.
Well, I
And
I I still think that Apple has creative control over everything. And my theory, and not from inside information, was that when EMI settled its litigation with the Beatles, and the Beatles were trying to argue, they were arguing that we get ownership of the masters because EMI screwed us out of royalties.
hmm,
And they worked out a settlement, obviously. And I would guess the settlement was okay, you get to keep the masters, but we have 100% creative control. So I would think that
mm,
Apple is calling the shots and Universal making recommendations. I'm not saying this on any inside information, just based on, what I've always felt the settlement agreement had to have been back in the day. I think
hmm,
also the influence of Disney is big right now because,
mhm,
you know, Disney, in all likelihood, doesn't want physical product coming out
mhm,
because they don't want someone to be able to go to the store and buy this new anthology. They want people who aren't subscribed to Disney Plus to
hmm,
sign up for Disney Plus. And so I think a lot of decisions
mhm,
that Apple makes, you're going to have to balance the Apple board, you're going to have to balance Universal, and you're going to have to balance Disney. So it's going to be a lot of different factors that go in. But I still would think that, you know, what Apple wants, I think more or less Apple would get, but they are going to have to balance. It's going to be even more of a balancing act than before.
I'm going to disagree with you a little bit there, Bruce, because
Sure.
I do think the anthology will come out on Blu-ray. Um, they, people have been asking for that for a long time, and there's no reason not to. I don't think they'll issue both versions, however, on Blu-ray. I think they'll just go with the later one, but I can't see them not doing that.
But you
they
may be
released
well,
right.
Get Back. They released Get Back.
They did, but then
Right.
they didn't release Beatles 64. So,
or let it be.
Or let it
yeah,
be. Yeah.
yeah. So there may be physical product later. And if there is, I'm certainly not opposed to it.
Yeah. The problem is that the Blu-ray DVD market has cratered. And so it's more cost effective for the streaming services to run these films and without any physical product being released.
Yeah,
It's
but one
just
one one thing though, and I think this is something that Universal and everybody finds out every time they're talking about putting out a new Beatles project, and well, CD sales are down, or vinyl sales, or all these things are down, but the
mm,
Beatles seem to be an exception in that where with a lot of groups, yes, if you put out this for them, it would not sell in those numbers. But I think the Beatles still are selling respectable numbers in CD and vinyl, even though sales are generally down. So I think the Beatles are an exception to a lot of rules.
Except that there hasn't been even a whisper about either Let It Be or Beatles 64 coming out in a
Yeah.
physical form.
No, I agree with that. And it may be
Yeah.
that they don't, although, I think Let It Be might have more of a chance because I don't think Let It Be has ever been available for streaming, has it? I mean, Get Back has, but I don't think Let It Be
No.
has.
No, no,
No, I don't
because
think.
it had been out of circulation for since the VHS days.
Yeah, it may
Hmm.
be a deal that Apple had to cut with Disney to say, well, we won't put Let It Be out for 5 years or something. I don't know. Pure
That's possible.
speculation.
Just
Well,
to give Get Back more attention.
remember
Yeah,
that there was talk that Let It Be was going to be out with Get Back. Remember?
there
Yeah.
was, but then it
And
didn't happen.
right,
Yeah,
right. They and a lot of people were not happy about that because that it was expected. In fact, I'm trying to remember. It seems to me that it was actually in a press release that they were going to do that.
Yes.
And so I mean they had it down on paper that they were going to do it and they didn't. And I mean I can't see, for example, Beatles 64, I can't see that going out because I don't see that as a big deal. um I mean it really wasn't that great in my opinion.
Hmm.
um but Let It Be is historical and actually should have, it would have really belonged with Get Back. And I think the new anthology will be out too because of the fact that I think there's enough of a demand for Blu-ray. And I don't think, and the other thing about Disney is that the announcement of the anthology came on the heels of that big thing with Colbert, and there are a lot of people that cut Disney and did not re rejoin it even with the
Hmm.
Beatles. So
Yeah, but now, I still think that people are going to want it. I agree with you. They're going to want physical product, but I still think that Apple and Universal or whoever else, they're all going to have to balance it with what Disney wants as well. It's a
yeah,
balancing act.
well, yeah, no, I can see that argument, and I agree. I think there is going to have to. I mean, Disney does have, a say. There's no getting
yeah.
around that.
I'll give you an example. I think it was now about 2.5 years ago. There was a listing for a DVD Blu-ray release of Hamilton, because Hamilton has been on Disney Plus for 3 or 4 years now.
Hmm.
And there was a listing for a DVD Blu-ray release. Never happened. And in fact, there was just very recently there was a theater run for Hamilton, a limited run, and but there's not even a whisper about a physical release. It's just that these days, if you go into Target or Walmart and you go to where the DVDs and Blu-rays are, it's 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 pretty depressing because there's not a lot there. There might be
Right.
a few, you know, Marvel things, or
If Disney is so concerned about the cost, why don't they just make a limited amount of DVDs and Blu-rays? They
What do you
got to
mean?
know it's going
Well,
to,
the
because
problem with limited amounts, and you remember that originally the Beatles mono box set on CD was going to be a limited
yeah,
run. And the
mm,
problem with the limited run is that if it's the Beatles we're dealing with, it's going to sell out and then it'll be on the secondary market for double, triple, or more.
hmm.
And the Beatles and Disney won't get a penny of that. And people will be angry at them for making it a limited edition. So I'm
Right.
I'm not a fan of limited editions.
Same here. I'm not either.
mhm.
Hmm. Well, after they sell out, why can't they not say it's a limited run of 10,000? Just say it's a limited run for now, and if they sell out, they make more.
Oh, that's fine. But don't say, we're doing 10,000 and when they're gone, because then people will hoard it and other people who
Mm.
didn't act soon enough are going to pay a lot of extra money.
I think anytime you use the word limited, though, that's going to happen, and I think they would be making a mistake
Yeah.
to even hint at that and then not to do it,
Hmm.
because there are always people that will take it to eBay and take and in the secondary market, like you said, Bruce.
Yeah.
So
All right, so let's talk about Volume 4 and
Yay!
what you felt were the highlights of the collection. I'll just begin by saying, just for Baby You're a Rich Man, it's worth it.
yes, agreed.
I loved that version and how they jammed at the end and hearing Paul sing the chorus and they're all having a good time and John singing Rich Man like that and the banter before that, talking about asking for cannabis resin and all that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I
That
can
was
get
so
away with
true.
that on the radio, putting that in my show, but
Oh yeah,
Oh,
you,
these
you can.
days, that's nothing.
okay.
I mean, the banner is fascinating because it shows a creative process. First of all, we learn from the banner that John's in the control room. He's not on the studio floor.
Hmm.
Can you bring some cokes up here, or in here? And then also, Paul and John are talking back on it, and they're telling George, needs to tune his guitar. And then Paul gets the idea. He says, "Well, should we just do this one with bass and drums?" And John says, "Yeah, that guitar's cursed, man." And so they make that decision to just do it. So we get the studio banter with that. But then what they do is kind of clever. We don't just get the piano and drum track. We get the piano and drum track, but with the overdub of the bass, the overdub of the vocals, and I think probably some percussion. I think I'm hearing a little added percussion, but we
Hmm.
don't get all the other crazy instruments that Baby or Rich Man would have. And I mean, I would think that that was a vocal, since I'm hearing a lot of things I haven't heard, like the r's, that the vocal was
Mm.
probably completely recorded over, and that was just kind of a, first go round at the vocal. But anyway, I love it too. It's so cool. And at the end of the song, well, what do you think of it? And that was, we really did this, and John before it starts, even, about, let's get some London soul. I mean, it's just really they were having fun in the studio.
Right.
And on,
Mhm.
and on top of that, about the cannabis resin, the booklet says that Jagger was in the studio, and
Yeah,
that was actually directed at Jagger because of what they were going through. What he and Richards were going through. So
yeah.
that
Yeah.
was, I mean, that was just wonderful.
Yeah, in fact, I wasn't sure about that because that was right about the time that Mick and Keith were thrown into jail for a few days.
I
Hmm.
think they had a court appearance, according to the booklet. They had a court appearance the day before,
Yeah,
so it
but
was very much on their minds. I guess
yeah,
we should probably do a timeline and see when "We Love You" and was recorded.
yeah. Well, I
Right.
checked back with Keith Badman's book, the Beatles diary book, and sure enough, that date he listed apparently Mick was listed as being at the session.
Yeah.
So
But you got Paul going, yeah, we got swinging on that one, and I
yeah,
mean they knew they were having fun, and I think, and then Paul complains about it being loud in the studio, and John to the tune of "Baby Or Rich Man" is singing, how does it feel to be one of the loudest people? I mean,
Right.
they're just truly enjoying themselves,
Right.
and maybe one of the reasons the session was so loose is they were recording this song for that friggin' cartoon they had agreed to do, Yellow
yes,
Submarine.
Hmm.
that's true.
But that was definitely one of the highlights for me. Let's find out from you guys what were your favorites. Um, Bruce, you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, I was fascinated, of course, with Baby or Rich Man. I also liked I Need You
Hmm.
because this was a case where take one was totally different instruments than the final take, in that George is, on his jumbo rather than the nylon string guitar. Ringo's on the drum kit rather than playing the back of probably George's jumbo. John's on maracas rather than hitting a snare drum. Paul's still on bass on both of them. And George is having fun with the song, and John in the background, and I don't know because he's shaking maracas or it's a George song. Let's have a little bit of fun. He's cracking up and laughing.
Yeah.
Now, this is a big controversy, and I'm interested in what the panel feels and also the people out there listening, and let Ken know on this. There is something that Ringo shouts toward the end of the song, and it sounds like he's saying "F off, John," but and I'm censoring it. And
Uh-huh.
I've asked people, and some people say yes, he's saying that, and some people say no. And it would fit because Ringo's not being angry. He's kind of just you're making fun of George. Why don't you go f off?
Uh,
And then even George, he in the last word he sings on that, you hear kind of a laughter in George's voice, laughing along with it. So to me, once again, it's the Beatles having fun in the studio.
right.
Mm.
Also, that version is significantly faster than what the Beatles ended up recording.
Yes.
Even though George at the beginning says, "Don't take this too fast," and
Okay.
also, little things like, "If I Fell," which I find is very interesting because, we know from interviews with Paul and things that George was very creative during the Hard Day's Night session. For example, and I Love
Sure.
Her, you know, George comes up with the riff that Paul says makes the song. Dun, dun,
Mm.
dun, dun. Same thing with, You Can't Do That, which was same sessions where
Mhm.
George Martin suggested needs some sort of riff, and George, well, what do you something like this? So what you have at the end of If I Fell, George plays that ending riff, and then he says, you know, how about that? Whatever
Mm.
type thing. Yeah, that's fine, George, something like that again. And also Ringo's drumming at the beginning, he does it da da dun dun, but the rest of the song he plays it completely straight, no drum fills at all. And George doesn't do the guitar fills. But by the time they get to the master take, of course, Ringo has his drum fills in place.
Mm.
So I just find that interesting that they took it really straight and then put in those little extras as they went along. And that once again, it's that creative process in the
Mm.
studio. Even then, the Beatles were being building in the studio and not just going in and saying, we played this song live 3 times. We're just going to record it live.
Well, that's one of the best things about all the anthology releases is hearing early takes and hearing the songs being developed, hearing what's missing. Like you mentioned, and I Love Her. It didn't have the middle eight, the
Mm-hmm.
version that's in the Beatles anthology. So, and you also learn, because I think there's so much we still don't know that George contributed with his guitar parts, because it's hardly ever mentioned. It really filled out the sound of what you heard, as far as like listening to Help, all the lead guitar parts that he's playing in the background, and he's not given credit for that, really. It's very easy to give credit to the songwriter.
Well, I think in other groups, George would have gotten co-writers credit on many of those songs.
Mhm.
Certainly if he came up with the riff on "You Can't Do That," that's co-writers credit. Uh, you know, for "And I Love Her," do 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 do, for just about any other group, that would probably be co-writers credit.
We talk about this all the time on the podcast. How many songs could George Martin get a songwriting credit for what he contributed in the arrangements of the songs that made such a big difference?
Yeah. Well, we find out in the documentary that relatively early on, John and Paul came to the decision to not include George in the in the songwriting credits for the most part.
Yeah.
That's a real fascinating thing because I read about that also in Mark Lewison's book that it could have been a Lennon McCartney Harrison songwriting team.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how different the whole story might have been if it was the
Hmm.
three of them always writing together?
And
Yeah.
George would have been a lot richer.
That's true.
Yes.
Maybe he
Yeah,
wouldn't be so bitter.
that's probably true.
Uh, so, what other songs? I mean, I love Tell Me Why. I love how they're working out
Hmm.
the harmonies there. That's a lot of fun. And
Once
at one
again,
point,
studio
yeah,
studio banter.
yep, I love when George didn't do the right harmony and Paul goes, "You made a mistake."
I heard you.
Oh, that was John that made the mistake? I thought it was George that made the mistake.
You made a mistake. I heard you.
Uh, Al, how about you? Any?
Well, I, I love actually that whole section of songs from the early days.
Uh-huh.
Because it's I've always said that actually um, that John, especially John's early work, gets is very kind of unappreciated.
Mhm.
Those great love songs of his from 63, 64, 65. Not a second time, If I Fell, This Boy, Yes It Is,
Mhm.
songs like that
Yeah.
are kind of underappreciated because of the massive success of Strawberry Fields and Revolution and
Mhm.
et cetera, et cetera. But I love these the early tracks. That version of that early take of I Saw Her Standing There
Mhm.
is just is an absolute favorite.
Yeah,
Um,
same here. I was gonna that was the first thing I was gonna mention because when I heard that, it reminded me that when I first got ultra rare tracks, that opened
yes,
that was, and I was so happy to hear that
yeah,
for two reasons. Number one, because of what it was, and also it was in stereo, and
yeah.
we didn't have stereo. That was the first hint, not hint, but that was the first evidence that we had that those tracks were in stereo, and it still sounds great today. I mean,
Hmm.
and I was kind of glad that they put that there and so that everybody has that and can hear that now.
Hmm. Yeah, that take of Matchbox
Hmm.
is which to me sounds actually much more like the Carl Perkins
Hmm.
original than the final Beatles mix of it.
Yeah, and
And
Ringo's doing different lyrics, and I mean, I love where
Yeah,
Ringo,
yes,
first of all, even on the master, he breaks the blues rule. The first two lines are the same, and so Ringo changes it. But I love the thing about about if you don't want my peaches, if you don't want Ringo's peaches, baby.
Yep.
I mean, I
yeah,
just love that. And also, once again, for the solo, Ringo's like, all right, John, and John takes
yeah.
the solo in Matchbox, which is kind of cool.
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. And the interesting thing about Matchbox is 2 days later he was in the hospital. He
That's
was he was
true.
he was on
Yeah.
his way. We don't know how he didn't sound like he was having any trouble with his voice at that.
No.
Mhm.
So that whole situation that evolved just a couple of days later is really it's in the early stages and you wonder what he was feeling at the time.
That's a great point, and also it shows if you break the blues idiom rule of not repeating the second line, you get tonsillitis.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay.
Al, how did this version of Matchbox sound more like Carl Perkins' version? I'm trying to
Well,
understand that.
there isn't all the reverb, the
Okay.
massive amount of reverb
Mm.
that
Hmm.
even in mono was dumped onto the final take.
Right.
And the
On
piano.
yeah, exactly. And whereas it's more of a minimalist arrangement. Like I said, it's pretty much the same arrangement that Carl used on the original.
Okay. How did you guys feel about backing tracks? Like I really loved I Am the Walrus. And
Woo!
just hearing all of the instrumentation, the orchestration, just hearing all that without any vocals or anything really makes you appreciate all the work George Martin did.
Oh
You
God, yeah.
do, and I think when you listen to it, because you hear the keyboards at the beginning of the song and you hear John's vocal, in the background, that the orchestra mics were picking that up. So I doubt
Yeah.
they had all those headphones. So in all likelihood, those were on what they called the white elephant speakers. They were playing the backing track, and the orchestra's playing over it. And I love the fact that, as you say, you realize how brilliant George Martin's orchestrations were, and it's kind of cool
Hmm.
because this one's slightly different than the instruments you hear on the song. It's it's an unused take of the orchestra, which is also kind of cool. But no, I'm with all you guys on that. I love stuff like that.
Hmm. I mean, even though he didn't do the actual orchestration, the she's leaving home, the instrumental track of that is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
Fool on the Hill too.
And
Oh yeah,
yeah,
Fool on the Hill
yes.
is really cool because for the first time, and I've never seen it on a bootleg, we get the unedited length of Fool on the Hill. And
Hmm.
my understanding from the way it was described in Lewison's book and also other books is that the song was originally, much longer, and then they edited it down when it was done. And I'd be kind of curious to hear with Paul's vocal and everything, but at least this way, at least we have the backing track. And once again, what's kind of cool is we're getting these something recorded on a 4-track, and that 4-track is mixed down to one single track. And in doing so, some of the instruments, like I really don't hear the Celeste in the final mix, but I hear it clearly in this. So I think it's really fascinating to listen to.
Hmm.
Are
And
we are
if
we geeks or
mhm.
what?
Oh, we're absolutely geeks. And
Really?
if anybody has any doubts about whether Nowhere Man is a folk rock song, this version with the instrumental track is, that absolutely
Yeah, that
confirms.
that that early track, you've got George on the 12-string Rickenbacker, and
Yes.
it's playing it in the style of really the Byrds. And then when they redo the song the next day, it's different. They're on the Stratocasters, and it sounds very different.
Hmm.
I think it's better that way, but I think it's interesting to hear once again, how the Beatles, okay, they first attack it and they sound like the Byrds, and then the next day they sound like the Beatles, only not like we've heard the Beatles before.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way, but I now will listen to it that way.
Hmm.
How about the instrumental, the backing tracks for Hey Bulldog? What did you think of those? Of that?
The only thing my kind of feeling it didn't sound that different from the original.
Yeah.
I thought it sounded great, but to me it was like, okay, that could have been the bastard track just about. But it's I don't know why they thought they really needed to keep going with that one. That was a great backing track.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah,
I'm glad they had it, but it wasn't the revelation that all the other ones you've mentioned are, Ken,
right.
and Al and Steve.
Hmm.
When the remix came out for Hey Bulldog on the Blue album, I remember hearing these other fills, these drum fills from Ringo that I hadn't heard before. You hear a lot more of it in this.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Hmm.
So they obviously mixed it down on the release version.
yeah,
I
Yeah.
really, I really got floored by the "All You Need Is Love" track because it seemed to me like there was a lot of talking in there that we hadn't heard before.
hmm
Hmm.
that was bear in mind that you're absolutely right. That's the rehearsal the day before the
Yeah.
broadcast.
Right.
And what's interesting is you've got a BBC guy. I don't know if it's Steve Race or not who did the actual broadcast, but he's reading the script just to kind of get the timing at it. The words are the same,
Hmm.
but the intonation's different. And the whole bit like that. And John's having fun with it. I mean, he's doing scat vocals on the love, love, love part, and then he's even doing the vocalization on the, on the da 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 on some of the verses. And at the end, rather than he and Paul doing the "She Loves You," John goes, "Anybody got a bit of money? Anybody got a bit of
Yeah.
money?"
Yeah.
From Taxman. Where?
Right.
How did that pop into his head?
Really.
But there seemed to be more in that version than we'd heard on the bootlegs. I mean,
Yeah,
they because we'd heard that track on the bootlegs, and there was extra talking, and it was also in stereo for the first time, and
yeah,
that was another thing that was really surprising that they actually had a stereo track of that
yeah.
because I had thought, and it didn't seem to me that that could have gone straight to. Now I never saw the original um, satellite transmission, but it seemed to me like that one could not have gone straight to video, straight to the satellite. It was the
Yeah,
other. It was the other one that went to the satellite.
yeah. The
Right,
one that
'cause
you
this-
hear on the bootlegs is from the broadcast itself.
yes,
Right.
exactly.
And then the one here is the rehearsal.
Is the day before.
Yeah, and I find it interesting because we knew they rehearsed. We
Mhm.
never knew what the rehearsal sounded like.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I
Right.
was even interested by either Steve Race or somebody is, reading the script just to make sure they get the timing right and how this is all going to work when it's all part of this big Our World broadcast.
Mhm.
Even if he lies about the fact that the Beatles get along with symphony guys. No, no, no.
Yeah.
Sorry.
They get along best with symphony. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, right. Right.
So, what do you say we talk about the new remixes for Free as a Bird and Real Love? The controversial Real Love. Let's talk about Free as a Bird first. I really love the new mix. I love the harmonies brought up more of all the Beatles with John's vocal. It's a much fuller sound. I think it's an improvement. And look, I love the original, even though I know the limitations of what the Beatles had to work with and Jeff Lynne had to work with. But this is definitely as good as you can make it, I think. And we're living at a time when not everybody, a lot of people have this technology at home and they're playing with it themselves to the
Sure.
point where you can get confused which is the release version and which isn't. But I'm
Mhm.
really pleased with this version of Free as a Bird.
I mean, we've had there are free versions of Free as a Bird done in different eras. I mean, people have yeah, I think there's a psychedelic version out there. There's all sorts of weird versions, and some of them are actually pretty good. Not all of them, but some of them are. But yeah, I mean that I personally didn't care as much for this version as I thought I would. I was actually wishing they had brought John's vocal up a little more. But other than that, I mean, yeah, I'm glad they smoothed it out. So
Yeah. I give it an A plus. I mean, I really, you know, when we talk about Real Love, it's a little different. But for me,
Mm.
I don't really need to listen to the original anthology version anymore. I have this new one, and to me, this new one's definitive.
Yeah, I would agree. I would
I'm
agree.
actually a little surprised that on Anthology 1 and 2, they put the original versions of Free as a Bird and Real Love on
Well,
there.
they had to
Yeah.
because on Anthology 4, they have the new versions.
Right.
So, and I think that was one of the selling points, particularly on the vinyl. You don't notice it as much as on the CD, but on the vinyl, that's the last side of the last disc. And
Mhm.
you put that on the turntable and it's wow, this is really cool. It's the shortest side on the thing, but it's got, the three John Lennon Beatles songs, boom, boom, boom.
Hmm.
And they couldn't have changed it for Anthology 1 and 2 really because they obviously they made changes to it, but since they had new versions on Anthology 4, there would have been any reason to put new versions on Anthology 1 and 2.
Hmm. All right. I like the fact that they're both on there, both versions.
Yeah,
oh, I
Mhm.
do too.
Yeah.
particularly
Yeah.
when you get to Real Love, where you have a real controversy.
Yes.
Yep, yep.
Speaking of which, uh, let's start with Al on this. Your feelings about the new Real Love.
Well, matter of fact, a mutual friend of all of ours told me at the actually it was at the Chicago Fest in August that he had heard everything in the collection, including the remixes of Freeze a Bird and Real Love,
Hmm.
and he said that it was incredible. Um, I'm not sure that it's incredible. Let's put it that way. On my first listen, I thought it was great, but then in subsequent listens, John's voice sounds, I don't know, just a little artificial, a little synthesized. I understand that that actually they used, I think, two different vocals of his, two different demos.
Yeah.
And um, it, and also there's the controversy about the mixing down of some of George's guitar work.
Sure.
Or different.
Um,
It's a different fill,
yeah,
even. It's
right.
not that the fill isn't there. It's a different fill that George did,
Yes.
which sounds more traveling Wilburyish.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Do do
exactly.
do 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 do.
So actually, I mean, it's good, but I think actually of the three versions of Real Love that are out there, including the 95, 96 version, and the 2015 version that's on the
Mm.
One Plus disc, which I think everybody kind of forgets about. I think probably the 2015 mix may be the best.
The one
Well, I
thing,
don't know why they had to use a different vocal from George in 2015 to change it. Um, and a lot of people didn't even realize it when it came out.
Hmm.
I was pointing it out back then, but I don't understand why these changes are made in the first place.
the one thing I noticed
Yeah.
was that John's voice, it always, when I heard Real Up before, it always seemed like John was, the lyrics rhymed. They definitely don't rhyme anymore, and that bothered me.
Mm.
That was hard to get over. I almost wish they had kept his voice down just a little bit more, so you kept so you didn't change the whole, um, what am I trying the tone of the song, I guess is the word. But that's, if I had to criticize one thing about Real Love, that would be it.
Yeah, I mean, once again, if you don't like it and you have Anthology 2,
Hmm.
you can
Yeah.
listen to that version of it. Take your pick.
Right.
Right.
Well, I say that about all remixes because a part of me is a purist, and I can
Sure.
always say, as long as the original mixes are intact and they're still available, you can always go back to them, you know.
Yeah.
I have a
And
difficult time with remixes sometimes, it's kind of like what was wrong with the original. But I also know if the Beatles were around today and they had today's technology, would they have changed the way these
oh
recordings
yeah,
are
Oh,
heard?
sure they
Right.
would have. Sure
they
they would.
surely would have wanted the emphasis on the bass. One of the mixes, and and as a kid that I loved the stereo mix on A Day in the Life. And when
Hmm.
the box set came out, John's voice didn't pan from left to right. And I asked Giles about that, and he said, "Well, I tried it, but it sounded so different from the rest of the stereo mixes I did that I decided to not do that and release it that way." And I thought, okay, he's given me a good reason. I'll accept that. But I still like pulling out the vinyl or the CD in
Mhm.
stereo and listening to that voice going from one speaker to the other, which I, as a kid, found fascinating, and I still do.
Hmm.
So I'm with you, Ken. We always have the originals. I like the new mixes as well. It's great to have both.
Hmm.
Okay. So I guess that's it for Anthology 4. Would any of you,
Well,
what?
I gotta put in a plug for now and then to
Oh,
have that, because I know I, I get I get very pissed off because there are a lot of people that really poo-poo that song or that recording, let's put it that way. And I think because I just the other day, because somebody posted a remixed um a demo of Now and Then from
okay.
that. And in listening to it, it kind of confirmed what I've thought of it all along, is that the song, the John's original demo of it, it's not it's a rather mediocre late 70s John Lennon song. And yet Paul and Giles Martin, and to a lesser extent Ringo,
And George,
and George, yeah, that's true, yeah, were able to make it into an absolutely magnificent recording.
Mhm.
And it's one that, and I've said this before, and I know people poo-poo it, but as far as I'm concerned, the people that really get that song are my generation of fans,
Yeah.
the first generation. And I wanted to ask you guys about something. Because I think all three of you saw Paul on this tour.
No.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I
didn't.
did. Yeah. New
Okay.
Orleans.
Okay. Because I've asked some others about this. There's a clip, a YouTube clip from the show in Des Moines, Iowa. And at the end of Now and Then, Paul gets up, leans over the psychedelic piano, and points with both forefingers to the crowd, and then stands up, puts his hand over his heart. And I mean, it's a chicken skin moment. And I'm wondering if you may have seen him do that at your shows, or if it was just an isolated thing where just the emotion of that song got to him.
The emotion did get to him. And, from the Anthology 9 video and the promo stuff, this was
Mm-hmm.
something Paul really wanted to get done.
Exactly.
And what I remember most when people ask me about Now and Then, I go back to when I first saw it. It was in New York for the listening session, and they had three different listening sessions. Actually, they had four that day. And since I flew in from New Orleans, I wasn't going anywhere. So I went to three of the four. And the first time I heard the song, I'm thinking Ringo and Paul are singing to John and George,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
tears are swelling up in my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yep.
when I see Peter Jackson's video, it's like, yeah, Peter Jackson's interpreting it the same way I am.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very emotional song, but in addition to that, it's a great to end an album with because it has a sound of finality to it.
Yes,
And
exactly.
Free as a Bird doesn't, Real Love doesn't, but Now and
Mm-hmm.
Then, from the opening chords and the sound of it, it's like this is a final statement
Yeah,
from the
exactly.
Beatles. And
Yep.
that's the way I've always felt about it. I
Like a
absolutely, yeah,
uh,
absolutely love the song.
a valedictory
I,
statement.
Yeah.
I devour that song, but I don't know if when John wrote it, there are some people who interpret it as meaning, now and then I miss you. He's writing to the other Beatles, or he's writing to Paul. And you also know the story that Paul has told about Carl Perkins, saying
Mm-hmm.
to him, think about me every now
My
and
old
then, old
friend.
friend. And those were the last words that John said to Paul. So maybe Paul might interpret it himself as a signal to him or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the way that video was made, it was so absolutely beautiful, lovingly done. Mixing old footage with new footage together, it was so brilliant, and the production sounded fantastic. The guitar solo that Paul did, emulating
Mhm.
George, was so perfect. I know it's a simple song in terms of lyrics, but that's fine. I think people who grew up with the band could look at it in a very emotional way, just like Paul does. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm certainly, I think there are times like when Paul's done here today, when his voice
Yeah.
cracks,
Oh, yeah.
because he's,
The Amoeba Show.
yeah, because he's obviously thinking about how much John means to him and the memories they share. So I love that. It shows how human he is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say that it took me a long time to get with Now and Then. I did not like it when I first heard it. Um, but then when I listened to the words a little closer, I I figured the song in two ways. Number one, that John was singing to them, and the other was that the reason that Paul wanted to get it done was he was saying that to John.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think of it in those terms, whatever limitations, or faults you may think of the song kind of disappear because I think it was really a message song. And it
Yeah.
also to us too at the same time. The one thing
Yeah.
about the one thing about these three songs that we never really talk about is the fact that they were all it was all kind of for us to to celebrate John, the fact that we all missed him, but they this was just as much for them as it was for us. I mean, maybe even more because they were the ones that knew him better than we all did.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think that's something that really needs to be taken into account. I've never heard them talk about that,
Yeah.
saying that that was the reason, but I'll I bet I bet the house on that one
Yeah.
that that was it.
The Beatles
I
changed the
think
world, and Bruce Spizer documents the journey from Please Please Me to With the Beatles like never before. In Bruce Spizer's Please Please Me to With the Beatles, you'll dive into the evolution of the Beatles' sound from their earliest hits to the splash of American wide release. Discover the stories behind introducing the Beatles and Meet the Beatles, the American albums that brought the Fab Four to a nationwide craze. Spizer analyzes the music, the singles, and the albums with expert insight while placing them in the full context of the era. Beyond the notes, you'll explore the news, the films, and the culture that shaped the music, and the music that helped shape a generation. The book also features engaging fan recollections, offering personal memories that bring the era to life, from the excitement in the record store to the first whispers of Beatlemania. Bruce Spizer's Please Please Me to With the Beatles, an essential guide for fans, collectors, and scholars alike. Available now on sale at Beatle.net. That's Beatle, no S,
Yeah.
.net.
I think one other thing we should say about Anthology for someone unlike us, and that is you didn't own all the box sets and you buy Anthology 4 and you listen to it, it is a really good listening experience. And I
Mhm.
think that's important. Would I have picked the same, repeat tracks? No. I
Mm.
certainly would have picked Good Night. I probably
Oh,
would have picked While My Guitar Gently Weeps and maybe Baby You're So Square because it's kind of fun. But, you know, I don't know if I'd have picked everything that ultimately was picked. But every one of us were to pick something different. That's not the point. The point is it a good listening experience? And to me, yes,
mhm.
it is. And to me, that's important because, I played the CD in the car, start to finish. It was tempting to move to the new stuff. But since I'd already heard the new stuff, I had the vinyl about a week ahead of the CD. So
Mm.
for that reason, when I got in the car, I didn't have to keep fast forwarding, and it's an excellent listening experience. And one, two, and three, there are a lot of subtle improvements, some of them not as subtle. But if the things you didn't like about Anthology, like why do I want to hear Paul talking over the introduction to My Bonnie, they
Yeah.
need to fix that. They didn't. Hint. Um, but okay, they wanted to make it authentic to what Anthology 1, 2, and 3 really were, but improve the sound. And they certainly did, particularly on the earlier cuts. The live songs sound better in spite of all the danger, sounds so
That'll be
much
the
better.
day.
That'll
That'll
be
be
the
the day
day.
is
Yeah,
Mhm.
I notice more in that than in spite of all the danger.
yeah. And the funny thing about In
Mhm.
Spite of All the Danger, it is certainly one of the lesser songs Paul ever wrote. But whenever I see Paul, to me, it's one of the highlights of the show. It's just so cool seeing the band up there in front of this, background of a, you know, porch somewhere. And
Mm.
I just love in this concert, In Spite of All the Danger.
Right.
I'm going to get ahead of the discussion a little bit, but hearing My Girdle Is Red Hot in the anthology made me go through the roof. It made me
Mhm.
know that they're going to do something with Hamburg. They are.
Yeah, I can't wait for that one. And as far as we know, it may already be done for all we know, but I would love that to come out because you're right. the Hamburg, when I first got it and I listened to it and I played it once or twice because it was interesting,
Hmm.
but it's not something I go back to frequently because, quite frankly, it's just such low fidelity. It just doesn't sound good.
Oh,
You know,
I disagree with you there. I go back to it a lot.
yeah,
Because there's enough bootleg versions that have tinkered with the sound where they actually sound kind of listenable, but there it's nowhere near what My Girl Is Red
That
Hot sounded
yeah. I
yeah.
mean, can you
in this.
imagine, the complete version with Mal technology? I mean, that's going to be
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, it really is.
That's on my wish list.
What I would like to know, and certainly, Giles Martin or Peter Jackson could talk about this, is that with this kind of technology, if you can isolate every instrument, and I'm not sure if you can do that with every recording, why
Mm,
couldn't you take a lot of the early stuff that was mono or even live recordings that were mono and separate everything?
You can. There's no
yeah.
reason you can't. And a matter of fact, that was done on the on the Red collection to an
Right.
and so you certainly can do it. And to me, that's a reason to put out these early albums. And look, maybe you don't need a Please Please Me box, but why not a Please Please Me with the Beatles box?
Yeah.
Those because some of those outtakes, as we found, are quite good, particularly
Mhm.
from A Hard Day's Night. We've gotten an idea of what's out there. The Beatles weren't just doing the same exact arrangement 14 times till they got the best sounding one. A lot of
Hmm.
these evolve in the studio, and it's fascinating. So, I mean, I'm hoping that they all become available in our lifetimes.
There's
But I wonder if everything on the anthology can or will ever be completely remixed using Mal technology, because you listen to something like the 1960 Quarrymen stuff. That doesn't sound like that was touched at all.
It's a little better.
It's a
I think
I
little a
would think
little
they,
louder.
I think they use Mal on it.
yeah,
You
I
think
think so
so?
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Well, we need Peter Jackson here. Get him back on things we said today.
Yeah.
Have detail on that. But I totally agree with you with what you said about Now and Then, Al.
Mhm.
I'm so grateful we have those three songs, and a lot of fans will say, well, it's not really the Beatles. Bull.
Yeah.
You know,
You know, there.
I got into an argument when I was working at the newspaper with the guy, and he may be watching this, who was the rock critic. It wasn't me. Um, and he said, no. He said, Freeze the Bird and Real Love were not the Beatles. I said, yes, yes, it was. We argued back and forth on that one. And so,
All right, if it's not the Beatles,
Yeah.
then
What's
Who
his?
was George Harrison? Who
Yeah.
was Ringo? Who was Paul? And who was John? Oh yeah, they were all four in the Beatles. Yeah.
Hmm.
I don't know what the criteria is of what constitutes
Yeah.
a Beatles recording, because there are plenty of songs that went out as the Beatles that didn't have all four of them on it.
Right.
right,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yesterday isn't a Beatles song; it's a Paul McCartney song.
right.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Right.
Yeah, I did a chat on that on my Facebook page, and that was my question was, what constitutes a Beatles canon? And there were some interesting comments. Um, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah. I mean, how many
so,
songs on the White Album have only one or two Beatles on there?
Hmm.
right.
You know,
Yeah,
and
especially as you get down into the later albums, it gets trickier.
yeah.
Yeah. Is "Don't Pass Me By" a Beatles song? I mean, come on.
Yeah. You
Is the
know.
Ballad of John and Yoko a Beatles song?
Yeah. I mean,
There,
Yeah.
actually,
absolutely.
that's a great example right there.
Yeah. Exactly.
You
You
know,
know, but on those three songs, all four of them are represented.
Yep.
So,
bingo.
so you know,
Anyway, we'll have to do another show on that topic, and just I'll listen to Steve's too. How far back was that show, Steve?
What?
The
Are
show
you?
that you did on what constitutes a Beatles recording.
Well, I didn't do a show on it. I did a chat
Oh, okay.
in on Facebook for that. I mean, that's probably something I could do. But no, I haven't done it. What I did was on my Facebook page, I created a chat section, which you can do, and rather than have them, in the main part of the group, it's separated,
Hmm.
and it works out really well. In fact, I think I've seen you in there, Bruce. I think once, but I mean, you guys are welcome to come in anytime you want to, and sometimes it's quiet. It's been quiet since about the last week or so, but right after the anthology got released, there was a lot of discussion.
Hmm.
A lot.
All right. So what do you say we talk about episode 9?
Number
Episode
nine.
Number
number
9.
nine, number nine.
And I'll share my feelings about it, but I want to hear what you three have to say about it.
Go ahead.
And we'll start with Al. Al?
Oh,
Al,
I
number
thought I thought
nine.
you I thought you were going to
He
give
Number
heard
your
you say
nine.
feeling.
he heard you say
I said,
you, and I think he lost it there for a minute. Go
All
yeah,
right,
ahead.
Yeah,
so
I thought,
Al,
you
episode
lost the
nine
number
of
9.
no, I
episode
thought,
nine of the anthology video
Yeah.
streamed on Disney Plus. Take it away, Al.
yes, exactly. I thought it was very well done. The one thing that I think is, again, there have been criticisms of the fact that Now and Then got somewhat short shrift, because the discussion on that is just kind of tacked on at the very end.
Hmm.
And I think it's actually good that they left it in 1995, because if you were to sort of fast forward to 2023, George is gone.
Mm.
Ringo and Paul are 30 years older. I
Right.
think it just would have been awkward to have comments about Now and Then just from the two of them, or from Giles, who of course was not involved with the sessions in 95. Um, and actually I should know, because Jeff Lynne was it was Jeff Lynne that did that did the Now and Then, and well, the Free as a Bird, the Free as a
Free
Bird,
as
Real
Bird, Real
Love.
Love.
Yeah, exactly. Senior moment. Um, and but I think leaving it in 95, I think it did the job. It did the job well. Um, and as far as the rest of it, a lot of it, criticisms have been that a lot of it is taken from the special
Bonus disc.
features,
Mhm.
the bonus features on the DVD, and which is
And what?
fine.
Yeah, what's your criticism? I mean,
Yeah.
parts 1 through 8 or relied heavily on parts 1 through 8 of the
Yes.
DVD release. So why shouldn't part 9 rely heavily on the bonus disc?
On the bonus disc. Yeah.
I think part
You-
of that is that the reviews from many people who weren't in the know, you know,
Yes.
it was like everything on this is new to them. And they wrote about it like what's really cool about anthology is part
Hmm.
9 because it's all new. Well, no, it's
Right.
not all new, but there is some new stuff there. From a time standpoint, it's about a half hour shorter,
Right.
but
Yeah.
it still has some new stuff on it. What I would have done differently is I think I would have, I agree with Al, you shouldn't come in and talk about Now and Then, but I might have ended part 9 with the Peter Jackson full video of Now and Then and
Yes.
made that the last statement of anthology.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Good point.
Did you guys see not criticism, the comparison of the first four episodes that came out online shortly after? There's a very detailed comparison, and if you search for it and say comparison of 1995 to in Disney Plus, there are four episodes that they got to, and they went through and detailed it incredibly. I mean, they really did some work on this. I don't know how they got it done so quickly, but they pinpointed, where the fade-ins were different, where the, what exactly the differences were. I mean, I didn't know. I have to be honest, I didn't notice differences.
Yeah.
It
There
had
were
been a while since I had watched the 95 stuff.
Yeah.
there were
Yeah,
it
go
as
on out.
it just happens that about 2 months ago, because I was working on a piece on the sort of the legacy of the anthology that's in the current issue of Beatle Fan, and so I actually watched the whole DVD set for the
Hmm.
first time, and actually it was probably the first time I'd watched the complete documentary, probably since the VHS came out in '96. And so, well, for one thing, even the DVD, which only came out, what, 22 years ago, doesn't look great on, current TVs.
Mm-mm.
Hmm.
For one thing, it's letterboxed and all, but the new one absolutely looks fabulous. And they're as far as like anything that may have been missing because of the fact that the episodes are shorter, there was really nothing that was missing that I would say is crucial to the
Oh, I
story.
disagree, Al. In Hamburg, they didn't have the condom story in the new stream.
Yes, that's true.
I mean, I'm joking, of course.
Sure.
Um, I think, Al, you're absolutely right. I wasn't going to do an A/B for the whole thing. I'm glad other people have the time to do it. I
Yeah.
practice law full time. I do
Yes.
not have the time to do it, but I'm glad other people do it.
Yeah.
But what hit me the most was that when that DVD came out, I was like, wow, this looks great. And it
Hmm.
doesn't anymore.
No.
And that's the conundrum here. Yes, it's longer. Yes, there are things I like about it more. But as a viewing, listening experience, the Disney streaming one is easier to watch because it just looks and sounds so much better.
Yeah.
They did a great job. And the one thing I did compare was Hey Jude, because when
Mm.
Anthology first came out, I had not been to a Beatle Fest before. Oh my God. And
Yeah.
I had not seen Hey Jude perform like that, since the Smothers Brothers show.
Yeah.
And it was ingrained in my mind. And I remember watching Anthology, and rather than as on the Disney Plus, Paul's talking about the song preceded it. It wasn't edited during it. And I
Hmm.
remember those first 3 minutes were not only a joy to me, but an affirmation that I remembered almost everything about that, having only seen it once on the
Yeah.
Smothers Brothers show. That's how a big impression it made to me.
Hmm.
Then they get to the upbeat sing along part of a song. And on the original anthology, George, John, and Paul talk about all the turmoil going on and the stuff. And then at the end, Ringo says it was like we were getting a divorce. And I wanted to throw a brick at the TV. How could you ruin Hey Jude for me? So I wanted to see what they did different this time. So what they did different this time was Paul talking about the song, how he wrote it, and when he performed it for John and Yoko. That appears during the first 3 minutes. And then during the 4 minute part at the end, you have George Martin and other people talking. And while 30 years ago that would have infuriated me, my
Hmm.
reaction now is, I'll pull out the one video and I'll watch the Hey Jude video complete
Yeah.
without these people talking. So I
Hmm.
didn't mind it. And once again, I'm thinking, you know, these kids listening to it haven't heard these stories before. And it's kind of cool they get to hear the stories before. And they know all Hey Jude anyway. So
Yeah.
I'm okay with it.
Hmm.
Apologies for the
And
noise,
that's
Ken. If you heard the noise on my phone, maybe you guys didn't. Hopefully you
no.
didn't.
Now,
I didn't.
Good.
Steve,
Yeah.
if you could, do you have a link to that article, with A being the two, I mean,
I
the
could.
full
I'll send it.
episodes?
I'll send it to you. I'll send
Yeah,
it
it,
to you.
it may it may be updated to all nine for all we know.
yeah,
No,
Mm.
I just printed it out today.
Oh, okay.
It's very long, and what I ended up having to do was I had to print up um, like 5 and 6 pages on each page, um, to otherwise it would have been book length, and I wasn't about to waste that much paper on this. Um,
Well,
but I'll send you guys the but or you can find I'll send you the links. But if you
Hmm.
look
yeah.
in it says at the top it says Beatles Anthology DVD versus Disney Plus comparison.
Okay.
That,
Well,
And
that ought to Google it.
yeah.
you should be able to find it that way. But
Yeah.
yeah, there that it's I mean it's so detailed. It's I mean let me pull it up here. Episode 1 it says 2003 DVD version Recreation of Beatles 34 seconds. It's the same. 354 for Disney Plus says George first press conference on this tour we don't get much time to do anything. 358 John at press conference rewrote and we recorded and we play them every day. What do you rehearse? Smiling, that's all we rehearse. 404 George Martin, it was just one giant three-ring circus where there was no let up. And that isn't even in the first 4 minutes on or the going back to the DVD at 403, John says at press conference altogether, I think that's 30 days. Paul 405 to interviewer, there's just more people, what do you say, just more people scenes of chaos in America over their cover of Chuck Berry's, and I can't read that because it's in color. Oh, rock and roll music.
Hmm.
So, I mean, they really, I don't know how they did that. And they got it out very quickly.
Mhm.
So
Well, I,
the only question,
I'm willing to say those people were not practicing law full time, in my
That's for
defense.
sure.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. But
well, I'll bet you a lot of people watching this right now would like to read that don't
Yeah.
I'll,
practice law. So if we can just put that link in there.
yeah,
Mhm.
I'll get you the link, you know, and you can do how you want to with it. But or we can we can meet up and do another recording or something, but the link is better. So but anybody that like I said, if you look you Google what I just told you, you should be able to find it because that's how I found it today. So
Mhm.
I didn't use the link, I just Googled it and did it
Okay.
that way. So
So between you, Steve, and you, Bruce, things that the Beatles said in episode 9 that you found interesting that maybe you hadn't heard before, or maybe it was in the extra before and you thought it was really worthwhile hearing again.
well I agree with kind of with what Bruce said about they should have, or was it you that said they should have put now and then at the end? I think there should have been at least a little conversation between Ringo and Paul. It wouldn't have to have been very long, and I can imagine that neither of them probably wanted to do it. But
I think so.
I wish they had done just a little. You know, it wouldn't have had to have been very much, but I think that would have been nice to let it drop off like they did was kind of um kind of left you hanging, I guess is the way to put it.
Hmm.
But
Uh,
I mean, it was nice to have that to have the new stuff, you know. Um, and I did recognize a few new things, so they did pull a few things out. I remember that back when Ringo was on with I think it was it Colbert? He no with Jimmy Kimmel. He said somebody asked what episode 9 was like, and he said, I haven't seen it, but it'll be great. So,
Okay.
maybe they could have put that on.
yeah,
Yeah.
really, really, you know,
Um, yeah, I didn't take notes when I saw it because I just wanted to
Mm.
experience it.
Hmm.
I didn't either.
And
Me too.
there was something that Paul said, and I went, aha, when I rewatch it, I want to write that down because I really like that, but I honestly don't remember it. But I remember it was, aha. He didn't say that before, or I mean, he said it before, but it wasn't published before. And I like that line. So it was about two or three lines by Paul toward the end that I really liked.
Hmm.
And I haven't seen it in any of the reviews that I've read where they say, George said this or Paul said, is one I just hadn't heard before. And I said, that's a really nice quote. I like that. Wish
Okay.
I could remember it, but
Yeah.
I'm 70. Give me a break.
Yeah. So I remember
You're one
70.
of the younger guys here, Bruce.
Yeah.
I took a few
I
notes.
just turned 74. So, and I know Al, and I'm not going to embarrass Al to ask him his age because I know that.
76.
Okay.
Well,
So,
that's at least a number of trombones. That's kind of a cool number,
That's
yeah.
true.
Yes.
The spirit of.
So
Yes, that too.
Yeah.
there we
I'm
go.
very happy to be the youngest one here.
You're the
That
baby
hasn't
of the
happened
group.
for a while.
Yeah.
Okay. I
Yeah.
took a few notes down, and I liked when George said, I found it interesting. He said that it's good that they waited this long to make the
Hmm.
anthology. I found
Yeah.
that interesting right there because
Yeah, I remember that now too. Yeah.
um also George said the Beatles broke up due to stress. Nothing shocking here, but just
Hmm.
um how the Beatles got their boots. He mentioned,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I don't remember them talking about that before. Do you guys?
No.
No.
Okay. Um, Interesting to hear them at the mixing board listening to Tomorrow Never Knows.
Hmm.
I like that part. The story about Mel Evans putting uppers in the Beatles
Yeah.
tea, and George Martin and Jeff Emerick took it without knowing it.
Hmm.
So, but I think what I always sometimes find even just as fascinating is the dynamic between the three of them there.
Hmm.
And it just seemed like Paul was so into this and he was leading the way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
George was happy to be there, but he was taking it
Hmm.
all in stride and he's happy to be with his two friends and everything. But Paul is like, and he even made this one comment about, I love making music with the Beatles and I'm proud of it.
Yeah. Well,
So
you can tell that the whole actually the whole project to at least some extent was kind of Paul's baby. Even in the in the documentary, all the different scenes where he's making comments,
uh-huh.
Ringo and George basically were just sitting in chairs at home, I guess in Friar Park or in LA, and Paul's in a campfire, or
He's on a yacht or
he's on
Oh
a
yeah,
yacht.
on the yacht. Yeah.
He's on a yacht, or he's in front of a sea of lights that looks very much like the No More Lonely Nights promo,
uh-huh.
things like that.
He was also in rehearsal, I think, because at one point you could see the stage. Remember that?
Yeah, yeah,
So
It's like he couldn't find one secluded place to talk
right,
to him.
I guess
yeah,
not.
It's like wherever you could squeeze him in, you know.
yeah.
Well, Ringo had a couple of places too. He had the that um place in LA where he was porch in LA where you could see half of the city.
Oh yeah.
Sunset Boulevard, probably somewhere. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Wasn't there one scene in episode 9 where it might be Jeff Lynne saying, "Let's listen to the playback," and Paul's running to listen to it. He's just so excited about it.
Oh yeah.
It's
Yes.
like you won't see George running into the studio to listen to
No.
listen back. But it's like it shows you the difference between the three of them personality wise and
Hmm.
and Paul just loves doing this stuff. He loves
Well,
doing
Yeah.
the studio and working.
I wonder how much George's health had to do with that.
Hmm.
Because wasn't he ill when they did some of
Not
that stuff?
not quite yet. It was a couple of years later, but
Yeah, well, yeah. And he was stabbed in 99,
99, yeah.
right?
No, but I'm
But
talking
he
about
still had the cancer before that.
Yeah, that was like
that's what I
nine.
mean. I think I thought he had the cancer when they did that, and that was part of the motivation for getting this whole thing started. Am I wrong? I've always had that
No,
impression.
I
You
think it
know,
was
there's a lot of
I
stories
think it was
floating around, and I
yeah,
don't know what to believe half the time because
right.
Bruce, what do
he
you have something to say about that?
No, not really. I mean, I think it was just a case of there were other things. They were busy with other things, and it finally got to the point of we need to do something with this,
Okay.
Yeah,
and it just happened because it happened. I don't think there was a we need to do it now because one of us might be dead soon. I think it
right.
was more of, well, we have a time, let's do this. And
Yeah,
you know,
and there's also the speculation about, that George really needed the money. That's the reason why he did it, because of the whole,
Problems he had with
handmade
Dennis
films
O'Brien.
fee.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
And so you don't know what to believe. And
Yeah.
I
you
thought
won't
it
get,
was I thought it was because they wanted to help Pete Best out, so they thought they'd do it. But it did help Pete out. They did the
Yeah,
right
that's
thing
true.
where he did get royalties on it. And I remember
Yeah.
talking to Pete about it. He said, Bruce, it was about the money. It was getting the credit. And I said, oh, come
Hmm.
on, Pete. And he said, well, the money was nice too, you know.
Hmm.
But it was good that they did give him royalties because he played on a bunch of the tracks on Anthology.
Sure.
sure,
So he
Yeah.
right.
got royalties on those tracks.
Yeah.
And that helped about financially. And it certainly was it was good of the Beatles to do that.
And
Yeah.
Hmm.
I would assume that he got a boost from this too. Um, that
Yeah,
he was getting money from the first release, and now he's getting more money from this.
Yeah, I
absolutely.
would think
So,
so. Yeah.
I'm really happy for him in this regard.
although
All these
although
years that he did.
he's still done interviews where he wishes that Paul would talk to him or something, and I guess that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think the Beatles were probably embarrassed the way it went down. They made the right
Hmm.
decision, of course, but to have Brian do it rather than them was, you
Yeah.
know, it's hard to fire somebody, I think. And they gave Brian that job, left the dirty work
Hmm.
to him on that. I remember being at a Beatles convention where I was moderating it, and Pete was one of the guests. And first question, if, maybe about 8 or 9 year old girl, as cute as she could be, I call on her, Mr. Best, can you tell me why the Beatles kicked you out of the group?
Oh my God.
And
Oh
and
wow.
Pete, and what Pete said was what he said. He said, well, I really can't do that because to this day they have never told me personally.
Hmm.
And I thought that was an interesting answer.
And well,
Hmm.
that was I seem to recall that was the line he used for a long time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that he didn't just make that up.
no.
It's a consistent line from him.
And he was on What's My Line?
Hmm.
Was it
He
What's My
was.
Line, or To Tell the Truth?
It was
I've
What's
got
My
a
Line?
secret.
Or
I've
I've Got a
got
I've got a
Secret.
secret.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Yes.
boy. Senior moment, Al. Senior moment.
We're
Tell me
all
about it.
All those
we
TV
all get
shows blend together.
there.
Yes, they
although
certainly do.
Epstein was on I've Got a Secret too, as I recall. So yeah,
Those are fun to watch on YouTube.
Yeah.
I don't want to
What's
get into a big, but we watch What's My Line. I love that.
Okay.
what's your opinion about now and then, as far as you always heard that George didn't like the song when they decided to actually work on it, to redo it, then Olivia said, well, it's not that he didn't like the song, it's just that it was a poor quality recording. We know that a demo that was made, had a loud buzz through it. So,
Mm.
and yet the policy of the Beatles was always, supposedly, unless it was a unanimous vote, they wouldn't do it.
Yeah,
So,
I buy Olivia's explanation. I think
Mm.
that George would have been fine with the song if it was something they really could have done something with. I mean, it wasn't just the buzz,
hmm,
it was John's piano playing wasn't very good.
Yeah. Yeah. And
That's why Paul redid the piano. Yes, they could have isolated John's piano, but Paul played it better than John played it because John was just kind of working the song out.
right,
yeah.
So,
And
plus it would have sounded weird to have the bridge where the piano is totally different. Here's
yeah.
John playing it and here's Paul playing it. So, but I think if the technology had been there, maybe George would have been on board. I'd like to think that. but I think things happened for a reason. And to me, I kind of like the way it didn't come out to all those years later, because
Hmm.
it was something we always wanted to listen to. I always wanted to hear, how did that third song sound? And I'm kind of glad I didn't get to hear it because it'd have been a letdown. And
Yes.
now it sounds great. It's
Yeah.
kind of like the people who say Carnival of Light should have been on Anthology 4.
Right.
Mhm.
I am one of the few people that has heard Carnival of Light. And I will tell you, you're not missing anything.
Exactly. Yeah.
And, Giles gave a quote which was very similar to my reaction to it. And his was, I think he used a different song, but the one I have was, well, it makes Revolution 9 sound like yesterday. I think Giles said it makes Revolution 9 sound like Penny Lane or something. And the other thing is, yeah, everyone should waste 15 minutes of their life. Now, should Anthology or have it? No, but should Carnival of Light ever see the light of day, sort of say? Yeah, I think so, but I would
Mm.
have it on a Blu-ray or some streaming thing where it's video because it was meant to accompany a light show. So
Hmm.
get someone to produce a psychedelic light show, put it out, and say, this is what its purpose was. But as far as a listening experience go, it's dreadful. It's horrible.
Yeah.
That's another reason for a Blu-ray on the new anthology. Give us a Blu-ray with that. Give us put that long version of Helter Skelter that everybody keeps screaming about.
Yeah, but wasn't
Oh,
wasn't wasn't the
no,
second to
that's
long wasn't the second to longest version enough?
yeah, I mean that right because the version that was on the 12-minute version that was on the White Album box was interminable. And you want another 15 minutes of that? Whew. It's not
There are
like,
people still asking for it.
oh yeah, and I think they conflate that sort of original shuffle blues take on Helter Skelter with what we know and and the version that's um on 4.
Yeah,
Right.
for my money, Carnival of Light and the long, 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 long version of Helter Skelter are not the holy grails of the Beatles'
No,
recorded legacy.
not exactly.
Right.
You know what I'd like to know is the songs that Yoko gave to Paul for the Beatles to record.
Right.
Was there a real thought process behind those songs? Why those songs? We all know the songs that were aired on the
Mm.
Lost Lennon tapes that have been bootlegged,
Yeah.
songs that John wrote that he didn't release. Why
Mm.
those? Was there any thinking that, oh, Free as a Bird, I could hear the Beatles doing that one? And again, I bring this up all the time. Grow Old With Me was on that tape.
Mhm.
And they never talk about Grow Old With Me, even though Ringo recorded his version. But
Hmm.
why didn't they even attempt that? Was it because they stopped it now and then, so why bother with the fourth song? So I don't know why these questions aren't directed to, you know, the right
To
people.
Yoko? Well,
Well,
Yoko, but I
yeah,
don't.
that's
Yeah,
the thing at this point,
yeah.
the only
Someone should have
person.
asked Yoko that a long time ago,
Yes. Yeah.
Well, maybe
like
Sean
30
knows.
years ago.
Eh,
Well, I had the chance, darn it, and I didn't do it. Sorry.
Mm.
Because
That's all your fault.
yeah. Well, I mean, for people that don't know, I interviewed her. Um, I can't remember what year it is now.
It was a while ago.
It was a little while ago. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And what I did was I thanked her for the songs, but I didn't ask her for any. This was a promotion for the traveling um, art exhibit that she was doing
Mm.
with John's work.
hmm.
And what I did was I did something very unjournalistic, as I thanked her for the songs, and she seemed very touched by what I
The
said.
gesture. Yeah.
But
I don't think there's anything wrong with you thanking her.
No,
no,
not at
I
all.
well, yeah, and I'm glad I did. I feel, I, I'm very glad I got to do that because and I said, for all Beatle fans, I just want to thank you. And she said, thank you. So, Yeah, that was very sweet. But yeah, I don't know what the what the thought process was on that at all.
Yeah. All
Um,
I know is I'm glad it was those three songs,
Yeah.
and I'm glad now and then, like I said, it's just to me a final statement of the Beatles music. I
I
mean, I
mean,
know
Mm.
we might get other stuff like, maybe we'll get Susie Parker released on something, which I absolutely love, and things like that. But to me, I'm glad they called it the final Beatles song. It certainly was the
Hmm.
last one recorded.
Yes.
There'll never be another because you can't
Hmm.
do it with all those with the four of them anymore.
Hmm.
right.
But to me, like I said, there's something final about the way it sounds.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
to me I just love about it.
And getting back to what I said earlier, the lyrics really are like a signpost. They're either, Paul knew, that it would be a message to John or a message to the fans or some, it's a message. There's a message in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really presented to us in that way, but I think definitely it was. So,
Yeah, it certainly touched Peter Jackson the same way it touched me, and it was, here we have two surviving Beatles singing on the bridge to the two Beatles that aren't with us anymore. And I
Hmm.
mean, I'm not going to lie, it brought tears to my eye every time I saw it that day, and
Yeah.
it still chokes me up.
Hmm.
So beautiful.
That's one
yeah,
of the most amazing videos we've ever had. Between that and Free as a Bird, I think they're two of the best,
Yeah,
you know, best Beatle videos.
best
free as
Um,
videos,
free as
period.
free as a bird is amazing. I mean, going through and trying to pick out all the references, it's so cool that they acknowledged that. They really acknowledged the fans. You know, I mean, they've known. I mean, if there was any doubt that the Beatles knew how crazy we are, they
Yeah.
they told us. They told us with that video. So
since we were talking before about what constitutes a Beatles recording, one other thing I wanted to bring up about episode 9 was that Ringo said, if the three of us toured, it would be Paul, George, and Ringo. We couldn't call it the Beatles.
Hmm.
And it was really important for these songs to have John on them to call them the Beatles. But then, like we said, Take Here Comes the Sun. I mean, John wasn't on it, and it still went out as the Beatles. I mean, I
Sure.
understand it, their feelings about it, but when you think about all the songs that they did that didn't have all four of them on there, and they didn't
Hmm.
mind that it went out as the Beatles at the time.
Sure.
Right? Are you going to take a song off of the Ringo album, and say, well, you got three of the Beatles? Is that a Beatles song?
Right.
But the other thing I found interesting, and it could have been really tacky, but it wasn't, was, when I first saw him do I've Got a Feeling, you know, it was done with Paul and his band. And now he does it with John's, vocal flown in,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
on the screen, the rooftop concert of John singing it synced up. And it wasn't, for some reason, it just wasn't tacky. It was just really cool. And you just thought, man, it's a shame this guy was assassinated because, boy, what we wouldn't have given to see a Beatles reunion, how
Yeah.
wonderful it would have been. And there's always the danger of it would have been a letdown. I don't think so. I don't think
well,
it'd have been a letdown.
that whole story that's in Borrowed Time about the tour. I mean that when I watched that and I saw that, I mean that's enough to start you crying. I mean
Hmm.
that would have been an incredible tour,
Hmm.
and it's great to speculate whether Paul would have shown up for one of those dates. He probably would have. But I mean, can you imagine that whole situation? I mean, yeah, I mean that's really amazing. Have you guys all seen Borrowed Time yet?
Yeah, I haven't
I
seen
know
the
you.
director's cut.
I know you have.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I have not yet.
Yeah.
yeah. I went and bought the Blu-ray off of Amazon UK, and I really, really like that movie. I don't normally like movies that aren't authorized that much, but that one was, well, it was very good, very, very good. So,
The only problem I had with that documentary was believing that John really wanted to make a solo album without Yoko on it,
Mm.
because
you
that's what
really
they
don't think?
said.
Yeah, I know, I know. Was it Ray Connolly that said that?
I
I
don't
th
remember who,
I think
but now there's a lot of people who think that Yoko forced that on John. You couldn't force John to do anything. He made
hmm,
up his own
that's a
mind.
good point. No, actually, it might have been the guy that just passed away. I can't remember his name now. But yeah, yeah, I didn't even think about that fact, but yeah,
But the mere
yeah,
fact that also the tour was going to be the two of them having their own songs there.
Mm.
right.
So there was no sign that there was any trouble with the two of them. So, I mean, it was a statement, the way the songs were placed on Double Fantasy, that it was John, then Yoko, then John, then Yoko. And it wasn't one side John, one side Yoko. They were making a statement that way. It was a dialogue. It was meant to be a dialogue, as they said. So I just have trouble with that one part of the documentary. But
Well,
that's me.
cir- circling back to the whole anthology
Yeah.
package,
Yeah.
Okay.
we
Mm.
did
Yeah.
not mention that the book was reissued, and I think it's important for us to say if you have the book, unless your copy is really banged up, you don't need to go out and rebuy the book.
Exactly.
Make that point. And also, George famously said, it's a video, it's music. It says, and one day it's going to be a T-shirt.
Right.
The Beatles site already has anthology merchandise up,
Yes.
so it has become the full package, and I'm
Mm.
fine with that. But I understand why Apple is doing what they're doing, and I'm happy they're doing it. But I want them to still have some projects for us old folks out there who are proud to be first generation Beatle fans, and
Hmm.
let's get that Rubber Soul box set out next
Yes.
year, and let's not ignore those earlier albums because
Yes.
I'm sure they're great outtakes and studio banter from every single session that
Hmm.
the Beatles ever did, and it would be good to get them out in one way or another.
You also don't know what surprises there are in that vault
Yes.
because we never knew of that version of Goodnight,
No.
That's
with the
true.
Beatles harmonizing like that on the song. I mean, gosh, there's a lot on the anthology, and the archival albums that surprised us. Do you
Yeah, I
Hmm.
think?
mean, Yellow Submarine. Who knew
Yeah.
Yes.
that the melody was a John song? Who knew?
Right. Yeah.
I had no idea.
No idea at all.
Actually, the verses, those were written by John then, but then they changed. And the chorus was still "We all live in a yellow submarine," but
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was sung differently.
yeah.
Right.
Um,
But
how do you get?
we had always been under the impression that it was pretty much, a Paul song.
Yeah. What's interesting was I found a quote, and I had it in my book on the Rubber Soul Revolver sessions. In that book, I wrote that book before the Revolver box set came
Right.
out,
Hmm.
and there was some guy in the British press who was talking about Yellow Submarine being a John song. And I thought, well, boy, he's really wrong about that. And he probably was wrong about that. But as
Mm.
it turns out, he was also right about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Well, maybe
One of those strange things.
when it was rewritten to the version we know, maybe Paul had a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
So I just want to
So
ask one final question as far as the audio from the anthology. Where does this stand right now, in your opinion, in Beatle history? When you look at how important the archival albums, the box sets have been, is this just something now to complement those albums? Do you think that it was more something of its time or just something like a companion piece to the video? How do you view the audio from those first three volumes and now the fourth one? I mean, we love it. There's no doubt about it. We find fascination in most things about the Beatles. But it's
Yeah.
been so much ever since
It
Sgt. Pepper, the box set, it's been all the archival albums, you know?
it's kind of a bridge in a sense between the catalog, you
Uh-huh.
know, and then because there was quite a stretch between the anthology and when the archival boxes began coming out,
Yeah, I know.
because for one thing, in right in the middle of that period was when one came out and had this incredible success. And I
Mhm.
guess the attitude was, well, why put out something with rarities when we have this album that is the biggest selling album of the first decade of this
Right.
century, so in a sense, the audio the audio discs of the anthology are really kind of like a bridge between as I call it, the Rolls Royce of pop music catalogs and then the archival material.
Yeah,
I
I'm
think that,
kind of a, well, you
go
go
ahead,
ahead,
Bruce.
Steve.
Oh,
Okay.
I was going to say, I think the casual fan doesn't pay that much attention to the anthology and
Yeah.
may not even get these discs. But I think
Hmm.
the real, the real Beatle fans, I shouldn't say real Beatle fans, the diehards,
Hmm.
um, will have it. And actually, I mean, for a lot of us, we had a lot of this stuff before it came out in the anthology. Not all of it, but we had some of it. And and I think you know, I I I think one message that the release now says is that I think they will keep up the archival stuff. Um, but I think they because of the 30th anniversary, I think they felt they had to do something, and that's what this is all about. So,
Yeah, I think they will keep up with the other projects, but to me, I'm listening to Anthology a lot now, but I won't years from now. But what I'll do is I will take the songs on Anthology and put them on a bunch of different discs and
Hmm.
line them up with the box sets. For example,
Mm.
I was disappointed that the box sets didn't have the anthology songs on them, or some did, but
Yeah.
some of them didn't. I don't mind paying for the same music twice. For when I think of a listening session, I want to deeply immerse into Revolver, and I want to hear every available outtake and do it that way. I don't want a career spanning of outtakes. Yes, it's fascinating. As Al said, it's a bridge. When Anthology came out, it was the biggest thing, as their own, promotion said. And the Beatles anthology is the biggest thing since the Beatles, and I get that. It was great then, and I'm glad they've done this now. But I like to listen to the Beatles in terms of album sessions.
Mm.
When I listen to the White Album, I also want to listen to Hey Jude in the fast version of Revolution. When
Hmm.
I listen to Rubber Soul, I want to listen to Day Tripper, and we can work it out. When I was in college, I made cassettes that would take the albums, the British albums, and put the singles between sides one and two. You'd be surprised how well that works out.
mhm.
Doesn't always, but take Rubber Soul. Michelle ends with this riff, da 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 da
Yep.
da da da, and the Day Tripper, da 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 da. I mean, it just flows. A Revolver, you have She Said into, you become a paperback writer, which has that same hard rock sound, and then you go from Rain to Good Day Sunshine. I mean, it works great. So I'm a big person of do it yourself type
Hmm.
discs as our good buddy Tom Frangione is.
Yeah.
Hmm. So do you think that the anthology is less important than these archival box sets, or you said it's a bridge? How should we view these 4 volumes?
The Golden Gate Bridge is a bridge too, you know.
Yeah.
It's an important bridge.
Okay.
Hmm. Although, and we were talking about this before we started recording, that I don't know, I have a feeling that the since four is available by itself, I think the casual fan is probably going to be somewhat disappointed by four because only because it's they'll see the song titles, but may perhaps not realizing that She's Leaving Home is the instrumental track.
Hmm.
Yeah, but then they're going to
Things
get the
like
good
that.
night and they're going to go, wow.
Yeah, if they haven't heard it. Oh,
Well, you sound like
that
Paul when the Sessions album was proposed. And he said, "You hear that
yeah.
version of I Am the Walrus, the one that we all know? That's the version."
Yeah.
He'd be afraid if people heard an outtake and they would be cheated because it wasn't the version that they heard before. So
Yeah,
Hmm.
but
things
the
have really
Beatles,
changed since then. What's
yeah, I
that?
mean, the beat,
Yes.
like I said, it's we're scraping the bottom of the barrel and all. No, come
Yeah,
on, man.
sure.
These guys were brilliant. You know,
Look at that.
John's guide vocals were better than most people's, 10th take on a song to perfection.
Yeah.
Okay.
One song that really kills that argument though is the outtake of "While My Guitar Gently Weeps" that they played at the end of the Love Show. I mean,
Hmm.
when you heard that, especially in the atmosphere of the Love Show, I mean that was just astounding.
Well,
You
the
know,
acoustic version is so beautiful and set to
Hmm.
those strings. Oh my God. How could they let that go and not release it all those years? You know, but
Yeah.
I,
but the version on the album was great. So,
yeah.
There's one version we haven't heard yet, and I was hoping that would be on Anthology 4, but it was not, alas.
Which version is that?
There were like three different versions, two different full span studio versions, and there's one that just I don't recall what day it was on, but there's one version that just isn't out there. It was before Clapton was at the session, the one before that.
oh,
Oh,
And
Uh,
it hasn't been released yet. I don't know if it's any good, but I'd still love to hear it. I'd be willing to bet it's pretty darn good.
hmm
do you think that everything
hmm
is kind of planned in advance for the next several
No,
years?
no, no.
Especially now, because of the fact that there's, a new CEO.
I
Um,
think I think that Apple, I don't think there's ever been a master plan, but I think they've done a good job. If you look at every project they've done, I'm pretty much going to give it a solid A, even though I might have done something different
Hmm.
because I
mhm,
think what they're putting out is really high quality. And, the criteria shouldn't be what did they leave out? It should be judge it for what they included. And for what they included, I mean, it's really hard to give any of these projects a low grade.
I I
yeah.
I don't agree that they don't have some kind of plan, even if it's a really thin one. I think they do, Bruce. Although
And
you would be in a better position to know than I would.
yeah,
But
I stand by my opinion, and it's only an opinion, but I
Mhm,
don't think there's a master plan. There may become a master plan because now you've got, a new person there and you've got Disney involved in this. I
mhm,
mean, so I think Disney certainly wants a master plan because I'm sure they paid good money for these
right,
streaming rights.
sure.
So I think you may start to have more of a master plan now, but I don't think there ever was a master plan per se in the
I just hope
past.
I just hope Disney isn't ruling the plans here. I hope you know the what they're going to do has less to do with Disney than what the fans want.
Well, once again, Apple, I'm sure on everything has 100% creative control where they can say yay or nay. But I
Mm,
think we're also in a situation where Disney can probably say yay or nay. Apple might say, well, we want to put out Let It Be on video now. And they might say, well, no, not now.
mhm,
We want to push the Get Back project. So don't put that out now.
Hmm.
So, like I said, I think it's a compromise where you're going to have Universal, Disney, and Apple working together. And I stand by my statement of it's really hard for me to find fault, significant fault with anything they put out. I can nitpick all of them, but
Hmm.
even nitpicking them, I still feel, I've gotten my money's worth.
How much power do you think Paul and Ringo have at this point?
Certainly, certainly they could veto anything. And I think that
mhm,
anytime, if they're having a board meeting and Paul or Ringo personally or their representatives are speaking up, I guarantee you, whoever's there is listening. At some point in time, it's going to be the next generation.
Yeah.
Sean is obviously, has a lot more input now because Yoko's doesn't have it. Uh,
mhm.
at some point, Donnie will take over for Olivia. I don't know per se out of Paul or Ringo's children who the musical influencer will be. That'll be interesting.
Mm,
And for Ringo.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know for Paul and Ringo.
Hmm.
We'll see.
Yeah.
yeah.
See, it's always a guessing game
Yeah,
on all these
and that's
podcasts.
that's
What's
okay. That's all right to have a little mystery in life.
well,
Mm.
that's what keeps these
Yeah.
podcasts going, and it keeps the buzz out there on the Beatles. But
Right.
it's many of us think the same way. Oh, it was the 60th anniversary of Rubber Soul. They have to do something for that. Many of us were
Neil
not thinking
Aspinall,
about it.
no, Neil Aspinall famously said, "Is that with the Beatles, we don't put a big emphasis on anniversaries because there's always a Beatles anniversary."
Mm,
Well, they
So
put an
yeah,
anniversary on the CDs coming out in 1987 because it was the anniversary, the 20th anniversary of Sergeant Pepper.
yeah, but for the most part, they didn't. There was not a 40th anniversary Sergeant Pepper box set. There was a 50th anniversary, but it wasn't like every anniversary. Look, this summer, how could you not make Help available in movie theaters?
Hmm.
But it wasn't.
mm,
There's only one Beatles film you can license if you're a movie theater, and that's A Hard Day's Night, which is the one they don't own. None of these Beatle films right now can you go to a film distributor and show in the theater. I'd like to see that change because
Yeah.
I know movie
mm,
theaters are on the way out and all that other stuff, but there's something really cool about seeing A Hard Day's Night on the big screen.
Hmm.
And I'd like to see Help again on the big screen. The last time I saw it on the big screen was when the DVD came out and they had a release party in LA, which I was invited to, and I went to it. And it was great sitting in the theater, you know, knowing, oh, Ringo's back there and watching Help. Very cool. And I really miss not being able to do that this summer.
mm.
If Ringo was in the theater, I'd be watching Ringo watch the movie
Yeah.
and just seeing his reaction to it.
Good point.
I love that stuff. Like that scene that we've seen of George Harrison on Saturday Night Live watching the Beatles on Ed Sullivan,
Yes.
and talking about
Yeah.
John. He was blind as a bat.
Yeah.
So yeah, but sometimes it's like you look at the track listing of Anthology 4, and it's like, well, are they holding back a lot here intentionally? Are they being skimpy with the tracks? I know you said be grateful for the 13, and I am, the 13
Mhm.
new tracks. I look at what we're getting, not just what we're not getting. But it makes me wonder, are they holding back because they know that there's other material, really strong material, that they're saving for the other albums from Please Please Me through Rubber Soul?
We'll
So,
find that. We'll find out. And by the
Mm.
way, I heard a rumor that Disney Plus is going to stream this podcast we've done now as episode 10 of Anthology.
okay, I
Just a
wouldn't mind.
rumor.
Okay. But they won't put it out on DVD.
Definitely not.
No.
All right, so before we go, you guys want to talk about what you're all up to lately? You can say page 9 or something like that. Uh, Bruce, you want to start?
Yeah, I just finished a series of 9 books covering all the Beatles albums from the American, British, Canadian viewpoint, putting them all in context, fan recollections, meticulous details of how the songs were written and recorded, the packaging, fan recollections, all that fun stuff. And people say, well, what book are you working on now? For the first time in 9 years, I'm not working on another book. I'm still finding myself just as busy with Beatles stuff, writing reviews of the new product that's coming out, being on podcasts. I
Hmm.
guess, but the difference is I don't go home from work and then sit behind the computer and and work all night and all weekend on a new book. I'm enjoying a vacation from it. It very well may be that I will never write another Beatles book. The only reason I don't say that is I don't want people to be too disappointed. And when I come out, if I do come out with another book, I don't want him to say he's as bad as the Who. He's on his 5th farewell tour.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm up to. And by the way, my website is still beatle.net, beatle.net, net. Check it out. If you've heard about my books and you haven't bought any of them, why not? I did a podcast over the weekend, and one of the guys who watched the podcast went to my website and ordered all 9 of the books in the Beatles album series, plus my favorite book, The Beatles Are Coming, with a foreword by Walter Cronkite. So that's my plug. I now, since I'm not writing books, I have time to plug the old ones.
All right. Maybe we'll do shows on your older books.
On with me.
Okay.
Sure.
Steve, what's going on with you?
Well, I'm busy doing my podcast. Actually, I've been doing quite a few lately.
Hmm.
I just last week published an interview, and Ken, you recognize it, with Alan Weiss, who's in um, um, Borrowed Time. And he
Alan
was the
Parker.
first,
Alan Parker?
no, Alan Weiss, who was the reporter who broke the story of John Lennon in
Oh,
the
yeah,
hospital.
yeah. Right.
And I was after seeing the movie, I had seen his story once before in the Lennon Report because I wrote about that for Billboard. And when it showed up in Borrowed Time, I said, I got to talk to this guy because I had questions about how the story, because number one, he didn't know what he had. Yeah, and I don't want to give it all away now, but I mean, he thought he heard 2 policemen say that John Lennon had been shot, and he was lying on a gurney after being in a motorcycle accident. And
Mm.
I wondered how the story progressed, first of all, with the local station and with the network. And then, and I'm sure you guys know this, Howard Cosell didn't want to report that on the air.
Hmm.
He and that made me wonder what was going on there, what was going on with him, and how the network handled the technique, the mechanics of the story. And so we talked about that, and I was really happy to hear him talk about that.
Yeah, they showed it
Oh,
on Monday Night Football this
yeah.
past week, where they cut to it and said that this was the anniversary of it, and and Howard had interviewed John during one of the earlier broadcasts,
Right.
and this was how it was. And I mean, they didn't show the whole thing. Where I think afterwards Howard broke the news. He said, well, that really puts this game in perspective. It's kind of like, who gives a damn about this
Yeah.
football game anymore?
Right.
And
Mm.
I mean, and,
Hmm.
and I, like many people, that's how I found out about it. And in my case, I was studying and watching the game at the same time, and I heard it. And then about a minute later, my mind said, did I really hear what I heard?
Yeah.
And I called up WTUL, which was the Tulane radio station. And one of the guys who picked up the phone was someone who I knew. And I said, I just heard this. And he said, Bruce, the what they call them, Al, remember the machines that the newspapers had?
Teletypes.
Yeah,
Teletypes.
teletype
Hmm.
machine. And he said it made a 3 bell thing, which is the
Yeah.
biggest it can be. And he
Right.
says, I'm reading it right now,
Mhm.
Bruce. And he read it to me and he says, I'm about to go on the air as soon as I can compose myself. So those are my very distinct memories of it. And the next day, I remember walking to a vigil at the Sanger Theater in New Orleans. And remember when newspapers used to be sold in those things, you put a dime in and you get the
Oh yeah.
paper.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
And every time I walked by it, I kept wanting the headline to read Lennon shot expected to recover. It had never
Yeah.
did. And I
Mhm.
cursed every single one of those till I got to the theater. And then we all just, sang Beatles songs and cried.
But but
Sure.
but the story though, I mean, for the network and for the local station, I mean, the way the circumstances that Weiss went through to hear the story, he had to confirm it. And I mean, he's lying there and he's kind of, banged up and he has to confirm it. And then, they finally do get it confirmed and it goes beyond to the network. And then, the network isn't just going to put something like that on the air on its
Sure.
own. And that was some of the stuff that we got into in the interview. And I
Yeah. I
was
found
very,
the I
did you hear it?
yeah, I found it riveting.
Thank you.
It was excellent.
Thank you. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
really proud of that. I've done some,
Is
had,
that archived now?
it's the current one.
There's a podcast. It's available now. And
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
available.
yeah,
It's on
yeah.
YouTube. It's on wherever you get your podcasts.
yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it's the current one, the one with Alan Weiss.
I'll make
And
sure I put up a link to that too.
Yeah.
okay, yeah, I was really, really, really proud of that one. I had fun doing that. So anyway,
Hmm.
okay, but anyway, that's what I'm doing. I'm doing the podcast. I've got some possible, interviews coming up. And we'll see what happens. So there we go.
Very good.
Thank you.
Al, what's going on with you?
Yeah, well, now that I don't have to crank out two chapters, one on news and one on music for Bruce's books,
Nine
I
years in a row, Al
yeah
did that.
yeah
And Al, as I know I've thanked you in person many times, but I want to publicly thank you again and again, which I've also, when I'm interviewed, I do. But once again, Al,
it,
thank you so much for the big contributions that
it
you and
was
everyone, including the fans, made to the books. It was perfect. The perfect one was the first one's on Sergeant Pepper, and I literally got by with a little help from my friends because there was a big
yeah
deadline to get this book done, and I couldn't have done it. And I enjoyed working so much with Al and Bill King and Pierce and Frank Daniels that I kept the entire team together for a series of 9 books.
yeah.
So thanks again, Al.
It was my pleasure. Absolutely. So since that's now finished, now I can concentrate on writing for Beatle Fan Magazine. And the current issue, I have a piece on, oddly enough, on the anthology, on kind of the roots of what became the anthology, and then the legacy of what came after in the last 30 years. And the new issue, the next issue, also Bruce, you've got a
Do I have
piece
something in
in,
there?
I think you do,
Okay.
but subject matter I don't remember.
Okay.
And the new issue, I was communicating with Bill King today, and he said the new issue will be at the printer on Monday. And I have a piece in there which actually is a rewrite of a piece that I did 20 years ago on, as I call it, a week in December 1980. Not much explanation needed.
Yeah.
Hmm. Okay.
Okay. Well, everybody here is busy. And
Hmm.
Bruce, since you have so much more free time, you can always come back here whenever you want. All of you,
Anytime you
really.
anytime you guys want me to come on, I'll be happy to do so because it's really fun talking Beatles with people that know and care about the Beatles, like all of us do. And it's so much fun. Every now and then I do a podcast. I won't mention any names, and I'm sitting here going, why am I here?
Yeah.
Normally I really enjoy doing them, but the fun thing about this is, we all are very knowledgeable. We all have our own opinions. We don't always agree, and that's fine. And it's just a lot of fun. So anytime you guys want me or anybody else there doing a podcast, now that I have a time, I can actually do podcasts.
Yeah.
Okay. And of course, the
You're
invitation
going to be
is
in trouble now, Bruce.
Oh no, what have I done?
no one will leave you alone now.
Yep. Yep.
And the invitation, of course, is extended to you, Steve and Al, whenever you want to come on
I would love to. Just anytime
at
you
all.
want me. Anytime, yeah, anytime at
Mhm.
all. Anytime
Okay.
you
So
want.
we'll get the band together again when they put out that Rubber Soul box set that we really hope comes out next year.
Mm.
Actually, Ken, I was actually running a thought through my head of getting us on my show. So there.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm up for it.
Just
same
say
here.
the word.
Is Alan still is he too busy at the moment, or
Oh, he's always working on the McCartney legacy, but I'm sure he'd be willing to
that would be fun.
participate.
That would be
Okay.
fun.
All right. So, guys, thanks for doing this so much. Everybody watching, dig into all the Beatles anthology material out there. It's a lot to explore, a lot to just revel in. And thanks to all of you for watching, and thanks to all the new subscribers. Thanks to God for letting my voice hold up. And
Yes.
it did.
Yeah.
You have no idea what I've been through the last few weeks. But anyway,
Mhm.
thanks to all of you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Get well, Ken.
Okay, thanks.